Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, Vegas Summer League is over. The Timberwolves almost went undefeated. They came within a minute of doing it in the finale over the weekend. We'll talk about some intriguing end of the roster potential that was on display on Saturday in Vegas. It's all coming next. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Happy Monday, everybody. Hopefully you had a fantastic weekend. Las Vegas Summer League is in the books. We're going to spend the next couple of days kind of recapping, rehashing what we saw in Vegas as we peek ahead to the rest of the offseason. And now this is like we start looking big picture once the Wolves we look at how they fill out the rest of the roster. And actually related to that, on Saturday, we saw a bunch of guys that didn't really get much of an opportunity earlier in the summer have a chance to play a lot more. And so I want to talk about who kind of popped in Saturday's game, who may have a shot at an actual standard roster spot, who might have a spot at a two-way contract, who may play their way into a guaranteed spot on another team, all that stuff here today based on what we saw on Saturday. And then tomorrow we're going to talk about the biggest overarching takeaways from Las Vegas Summer League. So a busy couple of days here as we close out Vegas. First, a big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. All right. So Saturday in Vegas, the Timberwolves, of course, were 4-0 in Vegas. We'll call it pool play. And they were one of, I think, 7 teams that were 4-0. The top 4 in point differential advanced to the, the playoff rounds, the semifinal, and then the final. Only 4 of the 7 got to advance. The Timberwolves were, I think, 6th in point differential. Maybe they were 5th. They were 5th. They just missed out. It was based on point differential. So they had to play what was deemed a consolation game on Saturday afternoon. And because they weren't playing for anything, it was the last game of Vegas for them. They sat all the guys, the headliners from earlier in the tournament. We had already seen TJ Shannon sit out the second game of a back-to-back earlier in the week. But TJ did not play. First round pick from the other first round pick from last year, Rob Dillingham, did not play. This year's first round pick, Jean Beringer, did not play. And then also past second round picks, Jalen Clark and Leonard Miller also sat out. So all 5 of those guys, which was the starting lineup for a couple of these summer games, or I think 3 of the 4 summer league games previously, they all sat, which meant that everybody that played rotation minutes got bumped up as into starting roles. And then a bunch of guys who had not played got to play. So instead we saw a starting lineup with guys who had played rotation minutes: Jesse Edwards, Amari Bailey, Tristen Newton, Jamal Cain. But then Noel Eastern, who had not played yet at all in Summer League, got the start. Also in the rotation, who had not played at all, Martez Brown, Babacar Sane, and Des Watson all saw the floor. Rocco Zikarsky, this year's second-round pick, and C.J. Fulton, who had both briefly, well, actually, Zikarsky played in every game, just limited minutes, and then C.J. Fulton, who briefly played in Game 4, also played a bunch in this one. So a whole new cast of characters. I like that the Wolves did this for a lot of reasons. Obviously, you want to mitigate risk with the guys that already accomplished what they came to do in Vegas. We talked about this on Friday's show. Like, we saw what we wanted to see out of Rob Dillingham, TJ Shannon. For the most part, what we expected to see out of Jalen Clark, Leonard Miller, and Jean Beringer. Obviously, his first game was his best game, but overall played well. Also, there's no reason to I don't know, put any of that at risk. And obviously the injury risk piece of things. But then also it allows everyone that was on the roster to play. And we've seen past summer leagues where the Wolves, there were guys who legit never saw the floor. And I just think this helps in terms of, I don't know, a talking point to future guys you're trying to sell and beating your summer league team. It's a minor thing, but like if you're a guy who never saw the floor, if the Wolves had 4 guys that never played, it's going to be harder to pull those guys into your summer league team, into your organization on Exhibit 10 contracts, whatever in the future. So I like that the Wolves did it for a number of reasons. Everyone got to see the floor total or overall, I should say, in this summer league. So among the starters, we had Jesse Edwards, who last year was on a 2-way deal. This year on a two-way deal once again. Tristen Newton, who they claimed off waivers from the Pacers last December and has not yet signed the two-way offer the Timberwolves tendered him. He played. We're going to talk a lot about Tristen Newton. And then Amari Bailey, Jamal Cain, two guys I identified before Summer League as potential options for the Wolves to fill up their roster. They both got the start as well. I want to start with, there's three players who I thought were pretty clearly the best players on the floor, certainly for the Wolves. And you could argue overall, like there were some good moments for Kennedy Chandler. Malik Wilson was really good off the bench for them as well. But certainly the three best Timberwolves on the floor, and for at least the first three quarters of the game, the best three players on the floor, I thought was pretty obvious. And that was Tristen Newton, Jesse Edwards, and Amari Bailey. And I'd probably say in that order, honestly. Like I think in that order. So let's start with Tristen Newton. The deal with Tristen Newton is he is was a two-way guy last year. There were questions about like what's the shot look like long term, right? And then he's not really a point guard, but can he play one on TV, as I like to say? That's what the Wolves did with Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Last year they said, hey, you're going to need to do this. You're going to need to be the backup point guard, essentially. So the biggest questions are, can Tristen Newton run the offense? Can he distribute for others? And can he shoot with consistency? Well, guess what? He did that in this game. I thought the feel was good. He ended up with 10 assists, 4 turnovers. A couple were just, sloppy. There was one, I forget what it was. There was one really bad one toward the end of the game. And then there was one in maybe the third quarter where he was double teamed near the timeline and just lost the ball. Like a couple of bad turnovers. But also of those 10 assists, there were some key ones. He had one where he kicked to the corner for Jamal Cain 3 at a pivotal point in the second half. A couple of nice pocket passes that he had in pick and roll game, but he led the team with 10 assists. Nobody else had more than 4. Only had the 4 turnovers, which again, you can live with given how they came. 24 points on 12 shots. You cannot be more efficient than that. I mean, 2 points a shot is incredible. 6 of 9 on threes, 2 of 3 on twos. So a lot of it was 3-point shooting, and 2 of 2 at the free throw line. So it's not like he got to the line a lot. He got hot from 3. He banked one in, yes. But overall, really solid performance from Tristen Newton. And it was the decision-making, the pocket passing, the decision-making specifically in the pick and roll that I thought was very impressive. He had a couple driving kicks, the Jamal Cain one I mentioned. That's what you're looking for out of Tristen Newton, are the two things he displayed in this game. And we could go through Summer League, and I think I even said on Monday's or Friday's show, it may have been Thursday's show, one of those shows late last week, I even said Tristen Newton, I think I said, like, he doesn't pop much for me. He doesn't do much for, like, he's not somebody who, when I had watched last year in limited times in G League that I watched him, and then his very limited minutes at the NBA level with the Timberwolves, and then so far through 4 Summer League games, I just hadn't seen much. And I saw it in this game. Like, the feel, the comfort level was there. He looked like an NBA guy, and not everyone on the floor, not even close to everyone on the floor, did. And Tristen Newton looked like he could stick. Now, we can compare and contrast him to Amari Bailey, and I'm going to do that here in a second because I think ultimately it comes down to those two guys. And going back to last Monday's show, a week ago, Andrew Dukowitz from Zone Coverage was on this show, and he said he thought the reason Tristen Newton had not signed, and maybe this part's obvious, but he hadn't signed the two-way deal with Minnesota because he was hoping for a guaranteed contract from either Minnesota or someone else. Now, I don't think it's the Timberwolves, but he thought, hey, look, I was a second-round pick, just last year from the Pacers. The Timberwolves claimed me off waivers, thought enough of me to do that, keep me on a two-way. I can maybe get a guaranteed contract from somebody else. And therefore, he hasn't signed the qualifying offer extended by the Wolves as a restricted two-way free agent. That's clearly what he's thinking, is that he's going to be able to do that. And I, through the first 4 games in Summer League, was pretty dubious that was going to be the case. And you're not going to do it based on one game, but he showed in this particular performance why a team might take a chance on him, on Tristen Newton, because he answered those questions again in this one game. Can he shoot? Can he distribute? He did those things. All very impressive, and he definitely looked the part as somebody who's still very young and again, was just drafted last year. I want to talk about Amari Bailey next. We're going to skip Jesse Edwards and come back to him, but I want to spend time comparing, contrasting Newton, Bailey. Or one of these guys going to get a guaranteed contract from Minnesota? And if not, which of the two of them will stick on a two-way deal with the Timberwolves? We'll do that. We'll get to Jesse Edwards in a little bit, and I'll give you some overarching takeaways from this particular game. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors at Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. When you start tracking your spending on Monarch, you'll find something. Maybe it's takeout, just food in general, food delivery is what kills me. Maybe it's subscription. Some people just, it adds up to more than you're expecting. There's something you haven't used for a while, and you just realize, oh, shoot, I've been paying for this every month or whatever, or you're paying for more than you need to. Plus, if you want to have everything in one app, I promise you, it's going to make it easier to manage your money on a day-to-day basis. Take control of your finances now with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKDOWNNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKDOWNNBA for half off your first year. All right. Let's talk Amari Bailey. So a quick refresher on Amari Bailey is he was a UCLA guy, was a teammate with Jalen Clark a couple of years ago, and was like a top 10 high school recruit coming into UCLA. Obviously very good UCLA team that he and Jalen Clark run. He was a second round draft pick of Charlotte, I believe it was. Yeah, Charlotte 2 years ago. Didn't shoot well for them, only played in like 10, maybe 12 NBA games. Didn't shoot well really in the G League either. Bounced around a little, and now and it ended last year at the Iowa Wolves. So Amari Bailey, though, like what he can provide, the question with him is actually fairly similar to the question with Tristen Newton, in that you wonder if the outside shot can be consistent, and can he be the point guard, right? Like similar players in that regard. They go about it in a bit of a different way. Tristen Newton is more of a, like, the idea of Tristen Newton is that he's a better shooter. The idea of Amari Bailey is that he's better at getting into the paint. Both are questionable as playmakers for others. Both have shaky outside shots, which is why I thought actually I liked Amari Bailey a little bit more. He's also, I think, a more consistent defender, and I like his ability to get into the paint on a consistent basis, which he did do in this game. Now, between the two of them, Tristen Newton was clearly the better passer, and it showed up in the box score when it comes to actual assists, which is not the best measure of feel, of distribution, of creating for others, because turns out if your teammate misses the open shot, you don't get an assist. Doesn't show up in the box score, even if you made the right play. But if you want to look at the box score, Tristen Newton had 10 assists, 4 turnovers. Amari Bailey only had 4 assists, 3 turnovers. And over the course of Summer League, I was underwhelmed by Amari Bailey's playmaking ability, especially last game. I think it was the 4th game. Game 3 was a little better for him from a distribution standpoint, if I recall correctly. Game 4 was a bit spottier. And this game I thought was a little bit of both. There were moments where it was like, all right, Amari Bailey can do this, right? He can get his head and shoulders past the guy. He can make the right read, drop a pass off to a guy cutting baseline, kick it to the weak side corner, whatever. He knows how to do that. And then there were moments where it was like, okay, he's just trying to score. He's not looking to pass, or he's making the wrong pass because he's trying to force it. He's trying to prove he can do it, right? But what I loved about the game for Amari Bailey is he was touching the paint constantly, especially early in the game, scoring at the rim with regularity. And actually, we didn't even talk about the results of the game. It really doesn't matter. The Wolves led this thing until the final minute. Like, they were up like 18-3 early. The Rockets never let until the final minute of the game, and Minnesota lost on what was kind of a bit of a ridiculous ending. The short version is Jesse Edwards got fouled on his putback. They didn't call it. After a kickball in the inbound, they get another inbound opportunity, and they call a push-off on Tristen Newton, which actually, that's one of the turnovers. That's one of those 4 turnovers. Really soft call at that point in the game. They never call that in an end-of-game sideline out of bounds, baseline out of bounds situation. Really soft call, and turnover. The Timberwolves end up losing by 3. All that to say, especially early in the game, Amari Bailey was really, really good getting into the paint. And he ultimately only scored 17 points on 15 shots. So the efficiency was nowhere near the level of Tristen Newton. Neither was the shooting from the outside, which plays into that. 1 of 5 on 3s. So he was 7 of 10 on 2s. Again, getting into the paint, just 1 of 5 on 3s. Touching the paint, finishing through contact, at times being athletic enough to avoid contact if it's avoidable, and 1 opportunities, like all that stuff I thought was pretty impressive for Amari Bailey. The outside shot is more of a question mark, and this game's a perfect example. 1 of 5 from 3. Tristen Newton is what? 6 of 9 from 3. So clearly, that remains a question mark for Amari Bailey. But where he gets Tristen Newton is on the defensive end. I think Amari Bailey's a better, tougher, more hard-nosed defender than Tristen Newton is. And I would say more consistent. The tools might be there from an athleticism standpoint for Tristen Newton, but I don't think the consistency level is there for him on the defensive end of the floor. And then again, getting into the paint, 7 of 10 on twos, a lot of it in the paint, a couple of tough kind of 12-foot fadeaway middies, contested fadeaway jumpers when he touched the paint, getting all the way to the rim. The stuff you're kind of looking for from somebody who can get on the floor in a, emergency is a dramatic word, but like in a pinch, come on the floor and like, we need you to do something. And Amari Bailey can do something. Like he can do that and be a good defender. I actually still like him more as a prospect than Tristen Newton, despite this performance, despite the inside track Newton may have after being on a 2-way contract last year. I like the floor of the defense for Amari Bailey and the ability to get into the paint and to the rim. Even if the ceiling of Tristen Newton as an offensive player is higher, what do you need out of this role? You need somebody who you know exactly what you're getting, and that's good defense and the ability to get to the rim. With Tristen Newton, I think it's going to be a little bit more volatile, even if the ceiling is higher. And for me, that I like Amari Bailey in that type of role. And I would think a rebuilding team, a team that's looking to fill out their roster, or maybe it is a 2-way spot. Even a team like the Wolves aren't going to use their 2-ways for rotation guys. They're just not. Tristen Newton might be able to find, and I don't know who all's got 2-way spots open, but say it is Charlotte who ironically had Amari Bailey, or whatever team has a 2-way spot open and may have a shot, like how the Wolves played their 2-way guys several years ago. Like, I mean, Jordan McLaughlin got opportunities as a 2-way guy, and that's how he ended up on a guaranteed contract. Same with Luka Garza just a couple of years ago. So if he could find a team that's more likely to use those 2-way contract spots on guys that could actually play regular season and maybe even rotation regular season minutes, then that could be advantageous for Tristen Newton. And he leaves, and then Amari Bailey gets an opportunity with Minnesota. I don't know that either of them, for me, would be worth a regular season roster spot, a standard contract roster spot, not at this stage. If I'm Minnesota, I let Newton walk. I sign Amari Bailey to a 2-way deal. And if he can earn his way to a standard contract deal down the road and they've got one available, great. He's not a point guard, but neither is Tristen Newton. And these dudes, by the way, are about the same size. Like they're both basically 6'4". Amari Bailey might be slightly bigger than Tristen Newton height-wise. 6'7" wingspans is what they were listed at in the draft process. They were both second-round picks. Bailey 2 years ago, Newton just this last year. Bailey in 23, Newton in 24. So, like, there's a lot of similarities. I prefer Bailey. I think it's likely at least one of them ends up on a 2-way deal with Minnesota and the other one ends up elsewhere. But neither one of them would likely get a standard contract spot for Minnesota. We talked pretty extensively about that on Friday, which, by the way, just an aside, and we'll probably get into this more Tuesday, Wednesday. Malcolm Brogdon again was mentioned. I believe it was Jake Fisher, but there's another national conversation of Malcolm Brogdon. The Timberwolves are one of the 4 teams now that Milwaukee has brought in, oh my goodness, I'm blanking on the high volume guard that they just brought in. Anthony, that's who it was, Cole Anthony. They're probably not in the Malcolm Brogdon business, but there's like 4 other teams that are, and the Timberwolves are still one of them that's interested. So it could be something like that. It could be another big, as we talked about the other day. I don't think it's anyone that was on the Summer League roster, although I think that last 2-way spot will go to one of Amari Bailey, Tristen Newton, and we could talk about Jesse Edwards, who is on a 2-way contract and maybe still has a shot at a standard contract. He did play really well when he got the opportunity in this game. We'll talk about Jesse Edwards' performance and overarching takeaways from this particular game that closed out Summer League. We'll do all that here next to close out the show. All right. Let's talk Jesse Edwards. Reminder, he is the 2-way center. He was on a 2-way deal last year for Minnesota. Undrafted rookie out of West Virginia. Had played at Syracuse. I think 3 years at Syracuse, 2 at West Virginia. Similar archetype to Rudy Gobert. Big shot blocker. Maybe a little bit better with his hands in the paint, but I don't think he's even as fluid, which I know fluid's not a word typically used to describe Rudy Gobert, but I think Jesse Edwards, for the most part, has often been pretty awkward with how he goes about his offense, right? And that is an issue. And it's something I wanted to keep an eye on going into Summer League was could he be a role big at the NBA level? Does he have the fluidity to do that on the offensive end. And defensively, obviously, again, archetype of Rudy Gobert, meaning he's a shot blocking big, and that's the size he is, right? He's not super switchable on the perimeter. You want him patrolling the paint. What's his feel look like? And I thought he mostly looked the same, what I expected based on last year in the Summer League. So he got a little bit more extended run in this game. He ended up playing 24 minutes, having 18 and 8, 7 to 12 shooting, was only 4 of 8 at the line, 4 blocks in this game. He did commit 6 fouls. Reminder, you get to commit 10 in Summer League before you foul out. So he was not disqualified, but he played really well. And he was certainly one of the better players on the floor in this game. I was impressed with his feel around the basket. He had 4 offensive rebounds, nice touch, had a couple of tough and ones that he completed, and ran the floor okay. Didn't really showcase hands. And again, I think they're in the same range as what Rudy Gobert's hands are offensively. But I thought his feel defensively was a little better than I expected. And I kind of see why he's on the roster now. And the other day I was pretty, I don't know, critical, I guess, of him being on the, if he was back on a 2-way, which currently he is. Obviously that's easy to change. But in my mind, it's like if Rudy Gobert were to go down for an extended period of time, you're not going to play Jesse Edwards. You're just going to play smaller, right? Like that's what the Wolves would do. Break glass in case of emergency, sure, Jesse Edwards, I guess. But like for any extended period of time, they'd be looking to make a trade. They would just say, look, we're a smaller team now. We just, so I don't know if I don't know what the vision is with Jesse Edwards, if he is just a depth big. And at that point, like, I feel like you could use your 2-way spot in another way. But he looked pretty good in this game. Like, again, the feel on both ends was there. He looked a little more fluid than I expected. And I was mostly impressed with his touch around the basket, his nose for the basketball in the offensive glass. Was pretty impressed by that overall. The 18 and 8 with 4 blocks, like, we'll take that. I'm sure he'll take it too in the Summer League finale. So all that to say, like, I think he ends up still on a 2-way this year. There's a shot they give him the Luka Garza role where it's like, hey, we think you've shown us enough that we know that your floor is here on defense. Luka Garza's might have been here on offense and wasn't good defensively. Maybe the idea with Jesse Edwards is, look, we think you can give us this much defensively every time, and this is your floor if we need you. Anything we get offensively is gravy. Like with Luka Garza, it was like, we knew what your offense is, but we don't know which, their defense isn't going to be great. So it could be the reverse of that. That's entirely possible. Other guys that played, Babacar Sane, I was impressed with. I was excited to watch him play. It's the only game he played in. He had 11 points on 8 shots, got to the line for 6 free throws, 3 boards, had an assist, affected a couple of shots, trying to get after some blocks. I thought he was good. Zacharski, this may have been his best game. Very active, couple of nice dunks in this game for Rocco Zacharski. That was nice. CJ Fulton was underwhelming. He was supposed to be the high assist, low turnover guy. He had 3 turnovers and only 2 assists. Made a couple of really bad plays. Had at least one. He had 2 steals in the box score, at least one really nice steal. But overall, CJ Fulton he's not a pro. I should say he's not a pro. He's not an NBA caliber basketball player, I don't think. Nothing really to say about Martez Brown. Noel Eastern was okay. Had 4 boards in 21 minutes, 3 of them on offense. I thought he probably should have scored a little bit more with his activity. But to me, the storyline is the guys Jamal Cain. I wanted more out of Jamal Cain. I don't think there's much. I don't think we saw much there. He made a couple of bad decisions, 1 of 2 on 2s and 2 of 8 on 3s. I still think he's a fringy NBA guy, and he's got a shot. Maybe the Wolves give him a 2-way. I like him as a player. This was not his best performance. He did have 3 blocks in 32 minutes. He played a second most minutes on the team behind Newton. So, I'm not going to say this game makes me feel differently about Jesse Edwards and Jamal Cain, but it certainly was the reverse of what I was expecting from those guys. Like, Jamal Cain was not as good as I anticipated. Jesse Edwards was better. I guess the same with Amari Bailey and Tristen Newton. Like, I expected Tristen Newton to not be this good and Amari Bailey to be a little bit better. So all that to say, like, this game gives us a little bit more evidence on, to the contrary with some of these things, but it doesn't necessarily mean it changes the full narrative behind any or for any of these guys. Overall takeaways from this particular game. Can Jesse Edwards play the Luka Garza role? I think he can make the case. I think if the Wolves wanted to spin it that way, they could, based on what I mentioned a minute ago. If this is his floor defensively, fine. Amari Bailey, not a point guard. We knew that. But we saw enough in this game. Could he be like Nickeil Alexander-Walker? Again, just 4 assists to the 10 for Tristen Newton. But that's the question. Can he play a point guard on TV like Nickeil Alexander-Walker? And you could say the same thing about Tristen Newton. And again, if he can shoot, if Tristen Newton can shoot and you believe in the passing, then he looks like he's a better option than Amari Bailey. He's just not quite as good of a defender. Again, roughly the same size. Those are my big takeaways from this one. I wouldn't have minded seeing Berenger one more time. I think that's more of a longer term. We're protecting this kid. He's not a rotation. Like, he's not playing rotation minutes no matter what this year. It was more because of what his ceiling is. We can't afford to have a freak injury and him lose a year. Like, we need to see this development. So I understand why Berenger did not play. A little disappointed just because I wanted him to play a little bit more, maybe with some more freedom without guys on the floor who just wanted the ball or who would ultimately end up with the ball in their hands more often, just naturally, like a Shannon or Dillingham. Speaking of tomorrow's show, Tuesday, we're going to talk about overarching summer league takeaways. Yes, we'll talk TJ Shannon, we'll talk Rob Dillingham, we'll talk Jalen Clark, we'll talk Joan Berenger, Leonard Miller, like all these guys. We'll cover my biggest takeaways from the summer. The rest of the week, we may have Andrew Dukowitz on again to really put a bow on Las Vegas Summer League. And we'll look at having some other guests on as we wind down the month of July. We peek ahead to what's next. We keep an eye on that last roster spot. We talked briefly today about Malcolm Brogdon. We'll talk more about some of those potential fits, some of the big men that are out there that could be fits for Minnesota as we get into the part of the summer where there's just less transactions. We are still daily, though, by the way, this week and next week, all the way until August. And then even in August, we're still 3 shows a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Okay, so daily this week, daily next week, and then we go to Monday, Wednesday, Friday. There's still so much to talk about here for the offseason. So again, a big thank you for always making us your first listen every day. And a reminder that you can listen anywhere. You can also watch on YouTube, and you can watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. A reminder that for your second listen, you can find the Locked On NBA podcast where there is no offseason. Doug, Matt, and Hayes will keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of that very same Locked On Podcast Network. And of course, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast. We'll catch you next time. We'll see you tomorrow.